Hello friends, and welcome to my channel, or welcome back. My name is Elise, and this is my mystical bookshelf. And today we are back to our regularly scheduled programming back in the mystical bookshelf room. But as promised, we have more Christmas books to talk about because we are in the season of Christmas. So Merry Christmas to those who celebrate. And my book for this week is an ARC that I received in the beginning of December, and I finished it in the middle of December, roughly. It was really good. Let's see. It was called Baking Spirits Bright by Florence Gray, and she's a new author, and let me say, her book is spectacular for starters, and it's really cute. It's sort of like, it gives me Barbie movie vibes, which is everything and more, in my opinion. And the main character is very sweet. She's very soft. And her name is Eliza Snow. And there's a male main character as well. It's a love story. It is a kind of like a snowed in, magical gingerbread house type of premise. And it's no spice, which is good. I don't particularly like reading spicy stuff. So that was definitely points for me in that category. But the male main character, his name is... It'll come to me if I keep talking. But yeah, so it starts off, it's sort of set in a fantasy New England. That's what the author's note said. It's a really nice author's note. Normally I don't read the author's note, but that was a really sweet note. And she also says she draws parallels from her life with her grandmother. I also thought that was really sweet. And there's also tie-ins with a Taylor Swift song named Marjorie, which is about Taylor's grandma named Marjorie. And the Eliza's grandma in the book is also named Marjorie. So it's a really cute tie-in. And his name is still not coming to me, but I'm just gonna keep talking because I know he's a main character, but like, I can't remember his name to save my life right now. But yeah, he was really sweet. The romance is it is so like sugary, fluffy. It's very fluffy. This book is definitely not super deep, which is what I was hoping for. And it's more about the fantasy elements of Christmas rather than like the true meaning of the birth of Jesus type of Christmas. But it was still really good. I don't need to read like super meaningful Christmas books all the time. I can set it aside for a minute and read a fun Christmas book. Not that the other books aren't fun, because they totally are in my opinion, and they're very heartfelt. But this one's heartfelt in like a different way. And I know there was some author's notes about Eliza's character, which I thought were helpful, but I totally understood where Eliza was coming from because I very much relate to Eliza. One of Florence's notes was that the reader might get irritated with Eliza for not speaking her mind all the time, and that's something that I can relate to very heavily, especially because Eliza's in her early mid-20s. I think she's 25. So I mean, at that age, you're still pretty young, and I can understand not speaking your mind. I was like that when I was in my early 20s, and now that I'm almost 30, I can say that I speak my mind way more than I used to. But I just thought that was an interesting author's note for the character, because if anybody is like Eliza, who is a soft female, who isn't always going to speak her mind, is more meek, like strong but soft in a way, that's sort of, I think you'll relate heavily to it if you are that type of woman in the world. It was very cute. I loved Eliza's character growth. Her character growth was very... It felt genuine. There was a lot of good, genuine character growth, especially between her and her prospective romantic partner. I felt like he was a very redeemable character. I loved him. He was a really great counterpart to Eliza. Lachlan. I knew his name was weird. His name is Lachlan. Thank you, brain. After like 5 minutes of talking, I finally remembered it. So let me back up just a smidge. I know I'm all over the place. But the story starts off in fantasy New England, and it is about Eliza, and she had gone through a really bad breakup with her fiance, whose name is Davis, and he was controlling and narcissistic and made Eliza feel bad about herself. So a lot of Eliza's character traits in the beginning come from the damage that Davis had done to her mentally. So I thought that was interesting too. I really felt for Eliza. I wasn't ever in an abusive relationship, but I completely understand the feeling of being like rolled over by someone dogmatic, and it's not fun. Definitely not fun. So I can understand Eliza's like character in the beginning, especially because when you have someone like that in your life where they just roll over you and they make you feel small, it's kind of hard to build yourself back up after that. So Eliza's very shy, kind of keeps to herself. She kind of wanted this getaway to be like, I'm going to get my life back. I'm going to take back charge of my life. I'm going to forget about all of my heartbreak that I had been through. She kind of just wants to spend it by herself. She doesn't want to spend it with family or friends. She kind of just wants to be solitary, and that's definitely not what happens, which is very unfortunate for Eliza, but technically I think it's a blessing in disguise, because when she pulls up to the cottage that her and her grandma had always stayed at together, it's a magical cottage, and it's something that is like embedded in the story. There's like, it's not like a true magic system, I would say, but it's definitely like there's enchanted things in this world, and the houses are some of the enchanted things we encounter. And she opens the door and she runs into Lachlan, and she's like, what are you doing here? This is my cabin. This is my time to be by myself. And she is kind of upset when she first meets Lachlan. And some of this dialogue that I'm saying that she says, she kind of says a little bit of it, but she says a lot of it in her head, which is something that I personally would totally do. There's stuff that I've said in my head that I wish I would have said out loud to some people, but I didn't, because I was trying to be nice. Sometimes you don't have to be nice. And so yeah, Lachlan and Eliza, they had double booked this place apparently, according to both of their travel agents, and so it's very frustrating for them in the beginning, but they kind of make the best of it. And they're snowed in for the most part in this story, because a part of the magical realm is like this freak snowstorm that happens, which I thought was really interesting and cool. And it felt very cozy. It felt very cozy unintentionally, and it was really cute. And it was very sweet. It's like the house wanted Lachlan and Eliza to be together, and that's kind of like the root of the house, is that the house has some romantic trauma. And another thing that was really cool in the story is that when Eliza bakes, she finds this recipe cookbook that has memories baked into the recipes, which I thought was really interesting. And one of my gripes with the cookbook was that the woman, her name's Isadora, it kind of shows her life story, but it only shows the really sad parts, which I thought was interesting. I didn't really feel like a super great payoff, because Eliza finds out in the end that Isadora actually got remarried after she was with someone who was abusive towards her. So the gingerbread house kind of shows Eliza all these memories of Isadora, and it shows the romantic trauma and the abuse that Isadora went through. And I think in a way it's trying to comfort Eliza, because it's only showing them to Eliza, which I also thought was interesting. But I think, and this is in my Goodreads review too, if you want to read that. It's been published for a while, so you might have seen it by now. But I basically just say in my review that I really wish we would have gotten the payoff of seeing Isadora happily married to this other man named Frank. And the part of the contention between Isadora and her like ex-husband was that they couldn't have kids. And so Isadora's like super heartbroken about that because she can't like give her ex-husband what he wants, because I guess he really wanted a family. But he kind of took it out on Isadora in an abusive way, which I don't think is fair. That's totally not fair. Fertility is a very intricate, nuanced type of thing for a woman. So it's totally like not even feasible to take it out on the woman, because you don't really have control over whether you're fertile or not. It kind of just is what it is. And it's like it's another moment where you let go and you give it to God, which is my tagline for my last video. But nonetheless, so I wish we could have been able to see, because Isadora ended up having a son with this man named Frank, who is a chocolate maker. Yeah, and it's just really cute because she's a baker, he's a chocolate maker. They could go really well together, like peanut butter and jelly. And so I think as a reader, it would have been a great, like, rewarding experience, especially for Eliza too. It would have probably helped her character growth a lot if she was able to see Isadora like make a happy conclusion versus just ending it on this really sad recipe where Eliza sees Isadora sitting at the counter crying, and she's reading a note left by her husband, her ex-husband now, and it's just kind of, that's where it ends for Eliza and the reader in that instance. And I really wish I wanted to see happy memories. I wanted to see Isadora like pull up the bootstraps and show us and Eliza that she did end up finding love, and I thought that would have been really cool. But nonetheless, Florence didn't choose to include that, and that's whatever personal reasons, I have no idea. But another thing that really kind of irked me about the book is there's a third act conflict, and it feels a little bit forced, because Lachlan and Eliza, they kind of have an instant romance type of thing going on, because they spend this whole week together, and it's like, I think it's the equivalent of 5 days. I think when they first get there, it's December 20th, and the very last day that they're there together is Christmas. So yeah, it's like about a 5-day timeline, which, I mean, I know a lot of people don't like instant love. I'm one of those people normally, but it didn't really feel like instant love necessarily. It kind of felt like this is a blossoming romance between two people in the span of 5 days, and they don't know if they're going to continue to be together after this, but they're really hopeful that they will be. And spoiler alert, they do end up together, and they end up getting married in the in the prologue, in the epilogue. Yeah, the epilogue, because there's an epilogue in the end of the book that's like a year later, after Lachlan and Eliza had been dating for a whole year. They get engaged on Christmas. So I thought that was really sweet. But the third act breakup, conflict, whatever you want to call it, it just is so, it felt silly. Like, Eliza was feeling particularly sensitive about something that Lachlan had done. I don't remember exactly what had happened between them, but it was like a really weird miscommunication thing. I think she saw a text message from his sister, and she got kind of scared because his sister had set up this trip for Lachlan, and that's how it got double booked. And his sister had texted him, I got you a train so you can leave exactly the right next day, so you don't have to stay there any longer than you have to. That's kind of how she put it. But I don't think his sister had like the full like idea of what was going on. I don't think she knew how much Lachlan was enjoying himself, so she probably just thought, oh, he's staying there with some random person, he probably isn't having fun, he probably wants to leave as soon as possible. But really, he had met the love of his life and he was enjoying himself. And so Eliza kind of sees that text message without context, and it's not like she deliberately looked. It was more like she glanced down at the counter and she saw his phone sitting there and was just like, oh, that text message. Oh my gosh, what does this mean? Is he going to just up and leave? Is he going to not talk to me ever again? Is this just kind of a one-time thing? Because the only thing that they end up doing is they kind of start dating a little bit in the 5 days that they know each other. And they kiss, obviously. They kiss like once or twice. And it's like mistletoe kisses, baking kisses, stuff like that. It's really fluffy and sweet. But Eliza gets all these convoluted ideas in her head from this one little text message. And I'm like, girl, I get it. I know. I can understand the spiraling. I have been there. I've spiraled before. But this was completely out of control and out of left field because there had been a really great scene right before the text message happened where they got into a fight with Flower, and it was really cute. And that was like one of the lead ups to one of their kisses in the book. And it was super sweet, and they had like a conversation about wanting to stay together. And I think Lachlan was pretty clear about his feelings for Eliza. So Eliza kind of just has this weird anxiety, fear in her head, I guess. And that was the only thing that kind of irked me a little bit. But I realized I haven't talked about my favorite part of the book yet. There is a gingerbread dragon in this book, and his name is Puffcake. And if you love dragons, I suggest you read this. He's adorable. He is the sweetest little cookie, literally, that I have ever seen in my life. He's adorable. He's a really great main side character. I would say the main characters in this are Eliza, Lachlan, and Puffcake. Puffcake is really integral to the story because Isadora had made Puffcake out of heartbreak, and I think Puffcake kind of had this heartbreak embedded into him, and he kind of imprints himself on Eliza, which is so sweet. He's like this really, he's like the size of a small kitten, I think, and he's just really adorable. So he basically becomes Eliza's pet, or familiar, I guess, since he's a magical creature. And that was like the best part of the book, was meeting Puffcake and seeing how Florence wrote him into the story. I loved how she described him. He's definitely my favorite character in this book, hands down. I want a plushie of him, basically. I love dragons. Dragons are definitely one of my special interests. And I would say dragons and unicorns are like tied for my favorite mythical animal. But yeah, if you read the book for anything, just read it for Puffcake, because he kind of carries the story for me at some points. And there's like 2 other side characters named Hansel and Gretel from the fairy tale Hansel and Gretel. And Gretel becomes friends with Eliza, and Hansel becomes friends with her too. But it's just kind of like a weird side plot where there's like a baking competition, and it's held on the day before Christmas Eve, if you will, because I know some people call it that. I call it that. So there's a lot of little nuanced plot points in this book, because you have Isadora's memories that play out, and then you have the baking competition, and then you have the romance between Lachlan and Eliza, and then you have Puffcake. So there's like 4 little nuanced plots throughout this book, but definitely the biggest vibes definitely feels like a Barbie movie. It felt like Barbie and the Nutcracker. That's what it reminded me of, because it was so whimsical and magical, and I could picture everything perfectly in my head, and I wish I had a physical copy of the book to show you, because the picture on the cover is adorable. And Eliza looks like Barbie to me. So I'm going to have to customize one of my many dolls that you see in the background, and I'm going to have to make an Eliza. But yeah, this was a really great book to read for Christmas, like right before. I read it in the middle of December, so it was like 10 days before Christmas when I finished it, and it left me feeling warm and cozy and fuzzy-wuzzy, and I would say I gave this book 3.5. I think my only qualms of it not being a 5-star would be us not being able to see Isadora's happy memories being baked out. And another thing was the conflict in the end. It just felt weirdly forced. But I mean, everything ended up fine in the end. It was just one weird conflict of miscommunication. But it was really short lived, and I think that's why it felt forced, because there was no lead up to a conflict like that. And then it just kind of got resolved really quickly. But those were the only two things that bothered me. Because I really didn't have a problem with Lachlan and Eliza and their, like, romance. They definitely weren't in love. I don't know why people jump to that conclusion when they hear, like, Insta whatever, stuff like that. Because they definitely were just getting to know each other. And I think it was a great build-up in that sense. And I think 5 days was definitely more than enough time to figure out whether you want to date someone, and they figured it out. So it was really sweet. It was a 3.5. I loved it. I want to buy a copy of it. I was really happy that I was able to get an arc of it. That was my first arc that I ever read, so I'm hoping I can squeeze more of those in, because sometimes it's hard for me to, like, physically read a book, and I had to make time for this because it was about 230 something pages. So I kind of read, and it was basically just 25 chapters. So essentially, for next year, I might reread it, and I might read a chapter a day up until Christmas. So I think that would be fun. But yeah, I recommend this book wholeheartedly. I thought it was really cute. The romance was very fluffy and sweet. It has some really good themes about sticking up for yourself, which I think is very important. And it definitely, I could see and feel Eliza's character growth a lot. I would say Eliza is one of my favorite book characters now. And her and Lachlan are definitely my OTP. They are top notch. But yeah, so those are my thoughts on my first arc that I have made a YouTube video about. And I hope to have more in the future. But thank you for watching, thank you for subscribing, thank you for the likes and the comments on my videos, and I hope you enjoyed this one, because I always enjoy making them, and I will see you next time. Goodbye, friends!